My son likes to eat pencils. Okay. Hello everyone, welcome back to my channel. My name is Jamie, and today we are doing part 2 of the Animorphs explanation kind of thing. We'll see how well this goes. First of all, I want to say a little apology. The last video I uploaded was like a month ago. I promise I have been reading, I swear on my heart. I just haven't felt video-y creative. Like, I haven't felt creative YouTube-wise making videos. I have filmed things and I just immediately delete them because I feel like whatever I say isn't making sense. I haven't really had anything to talk about, so I thought in order to get my creative juices flowing again, I'd just talk about one of my favorite series, which is the Animorphs. You might have noticed between the last video and this one, I have added more pictures. So let's just kind of go over an overview and I'll introduce all of the pictures again. The Animorphs is a children's book series created by K.A. Applegate, and it is about an alien war between the Andalites, these blue deer centaur creatures, and the Yeerks, some helpless body-snatching slugs. The Yeerks have started an invasion on Earth, taking over humans one by one. They have a club called the Sharing that's a front for the Yeerks, and there are some very high-profile people within the Yeerk hierarchy that interact with our Animorphs. Anyway, the heroes up against the Yeerks on Earth are the Animorphs, these 6 kids, these 6 poor little tortured babies. We have Jake, the leader of the Animorphs, the all-American good boy with a heart of gold. His older brother, Tom, is like the second in command of the Yeerk invasion. We have Jake's best friend, Marco, who is his second in command, and he's the always funny, always happy to be sarcastic, kind of optimistic, but in a dark humor sort of way. And in the last book, we found out that Marco's seemingly dead mom is actually the host of a Yeerk called Visser 1, the leader of the Yeerks basically, and the person who started the human invasion. We have Cassie, who is the heart of the group. She's the moral compass, she's the pacifist, and she's the animal encyclopedia. She's also Jake's love interest. And we have Rachel, who is Jake's cousin. Rachel is the warrior character. She is super into action, no thoughts, just do. And we have Tobias, the sad loner boy who got stuck in a red-tailed hawk's body and is now forever a hawk. And then we have Axe, who is the younger brother of the famed hero Elfangor, who gave them all of their powers and now defers to Jake. I think that's everyone. Oh, we have the Hork-Bajor, who are an enslaved alien race of the Yeerks, and then the Taxxons, who willingly submitted to the Yeerks, and they are gross little centipede creatures. We don't like the Taxxons. They're awful. I forgot about Eric. This is Eric King A.T., which is an android that has been on Earth for a millennia. He used to serve the Pemalites, which were a dog-like alien creature, and now has a bunch of dogs. Book 11. The Forgotten. Jake is having these hallucinations or visions of things that are seemingly happening to him. He sees monkeys swinging from trees. He sees a spear headed straight for him. He sees a jaguar. They're really weird and he's very confused. But Tobias tips him off on some Yeerk shenanigans at this weird abandoned building. There was an explosion. The gang goes to look into this, what's going on, and they find out that it is a new alien spaceship that they are like test driving basically. So the gang goes to steal it. Now, a big part of Jake's character arc that we follow through the rest of the story, I'm gonna burp. Jake is having a hard time being the leader and making split-second decisions because he never knows if the decision he's making is the right one. He is used to being a democratic leader, letting the people like vote, listening to everyone's ideas, taking everyone's beliefs into account, and then making an educated guess on what would be the best plan of action with everyone else's support. But when it comes to those split-second moments where he needs to make a decision and take a path, he is having trouble following through with that. He freezes up, he defers to somebody else, he wants other people to make those hard decisions. But Jake, as the leader, everyone turns to him, and he doesn't like that. So everyone turns to Jake, and they're like, should we go steal this bug ship? And he's like, yeah, let's go. So they're flying around on this alien spaceship, flying around the world. Visser 3 obviously doesn't want them to steal his ship, so he is on another ship chasing after them. And they happen to crash into each other, and then everyone wakes up in the jungle. Weird, right? Okay. Cassie uses her animal knowledge to figure out that because of the type of monkeys, they're in a rainforest, and they're probably in South America because these kind of animals are not seen in like the rainforest in other countries. I don't know. Axe then explains that this is a Sario rip or Sario rip. I say Sario, but I also say Hork-Bajir wrong. I say Hork-Bajor. So I could be wrong. Anyway, where was I? Anyway, this is a Sario rip, which is a rip in the space-time continuum. Basically, when the two spaceships crashed, they ripped a hole in time and sent them 24 hours in the past, and they were over the rainforest when it happened, and so they landed in the rainforest 24 hours from before, if that makes sense. Jake starts experiencing his visions in real time. So the spear that he saw being thrown at him happens. It's almost like deja vu. He's like, oh my God, that happened. Oh my God, I've seen these monkeys before. These kind of things. Rachel at one point gets separated, and this is one of the most terrifying things. I'm going to say that through every book, but this is one of the most terrifying things. She is stuck in bear mode. She's like unconscious, and there is a swarm of thousands of ants on her, eating her alive. And Jake, knowing how ants work and knowing ant politics, lures another colony of ants to her so that the two colonies fight, and she is able to wake up and get the ants off of her and is no longer being eaten alive by ants. But that's like terrifying. And then they almost get eaten by piranhas. So Axe explains more of the Sario rip and says that if they do not reverse it or find a way to like end the Sario rip, then the entire world will be destroyed. So we've got that to think about. Jake explains that he's seeing these visions, that he saw it before. So basically what happened was that there were two realities, two Jakes experiencing these things simultaneously. When he made the decision to steal the bug ship, he caused the Sario rip, but he's already lived it. It's kind of weird. They realize they're in the Amazon rainforest because they find a group of indigenous people and they're speaking Portuguese. And Marco is like, oh my God, my grandma speaks Spanish. All she ever said to me was Spanish. I remember like some of those words. Spanish and Portuguese are close enough to each other that they somehow communicate what's going on with like the aliens and the need help. They need help. So the group of people help them. Visser 3 morphs into this weird alien monster and somehow eats 5 out of the 6 Animorphs, leaving Jake alone. And so he alone has to fight Visser 3. Now Visser 3 is some sort of tentacle monster. Jake is becoming a jaguar. He's a monkey. What I love about these kind of stories when they're set in like extremist locations, like the rainforest, at one point they go to the tundra, is that K.A. Applegate uses the animals in their natural habitat to not only show a threat, but also show like those animals save the kids. Like the kids have to use the local animals in their natural habitat to outsmart the other local animals, but also like the Visser 3 and the other Yurks and things like that. So I just think those are such cool details of how they use new exciting environments to strengthen the story. I don't know, it's great. It's amazing. Jake is like a monkey, and then Visser 3 snaps his neck, and somehow that ends the Sario rip, and he wakes up back right before they turn to him to ask if you want to steal the bug fighter, and he's like, no. He realized that was the wrong decision, so he makes the other decision. Book 12 the reaction. It's actually, I think, in my opinion, one of my least favorite Rachel books. Rachel is my favorite character, and I love her books. They are almost always the most amazing book, but this one is just a little bit weak, in my opinion. Rachel and Cassie are on a trip to the zoo, and one of the younger kids falls into the crocodile exhibit. So Rachel, without thinking, because Rachel doesn't think, Rachel does, jumps into the crocodile pit as well. And so she uses her morphing ability to calm the crocodile. When they acquire the DNA, the animal that they're touching becomes more docile. It calms down. It goes into a trance, basically. And so she uses that to give the boy time to escape out of the crocodile pit. And she also escapes. It's fine. Jake does not like when anybody morphs outside of their missions. He doesn't like when they morph in public. He doesn't like when they use their powers at all, and because he's paranoid that somebody will catch them, but he's also just like upset that she does things without his permission. While Jake is lecturing Rachel, he mentions that the sharing is hiring this teen heartthrob to be like a spokesperson for them. The guy's name is Jeremy Jason McCole, and Rachel and Cassie have a huge crush on him. It's like that celebrity crush, you know, the little giddy like, oh my god, isn't that so cool? He's apparently some weird teen heartthrob. All the boys are like kind of upset that the girls like him. Later that night, Rachel is looking at pictures of Jeremy Jason McCole and gets that giddy feeling again and starts morphing uncontrollably and ends up morphing into an elephant in the middle of her house and breaks the floor. So she is able to morph back to human in time, so nobody catches her in elephant morph, but now it just looks like a human fell through the floor. I think she at least goes through one story of the house. I don't know if there was multiple stories, but anyway, she falls through the floors of her house, and they obviously rush her to the hospital. Now, because there are 2 accidents within one day, the media gets a hold of this and are like, wow, you are somehow the luckiest and unluckiest person in the world because you survived both a crocodile attack and the house falling. So they decide to put her on a daytime talk show, which just happens to also be the daytime talk show that Jeremy Jason McCole is going to be at. And they're like, oh, we could use this to our advantage. The morphing uncontrollably happens a couple more times. At one point, she's in the office with Mr. Chapman, and he's like lecturing her about her grades, and she morphs into a bear, but she's able to stop it before it goes really far up. But he like notices her bare feet, and she's like, oh, my slippers? Yes, they're all the rage. And she runs out of there. There's another time she's looking at Jeremy Jason McCole, and she's like morphs uncontrollably. So Axe explains that Rachel is basically allergic to crocodile DNA, and she's having this reaction because of her allergy. Axe says that the only cure is for Rachel to naturally... Tito! Oh, baby! No, he's not. Sorry, my cat has asthma. Where was I? Rachel will have to naturally burp out the crocodile DNA, and she's a little upset because that means she's gonna have to miss the daytime talk show unless she lies about it happening. And she goes on the daytime talk show, and hijinks ensues. She like starts going crazy. She bites Jeremy Jason McCole, and she's so embarrassed. Cassie has to like morph Rachel and appear on the show for her while Rachel's in the bathroom burping out the crocodile, which means like it's literally coming out of her body. And so then there is just a wild crocodile on the loose. At some point, Marco is a llama. Don't know why he's a llama. Anyway, Jeremy Jason McCole leaves the sharing and flees to Uzbekistan and goes into hiding. They win the day. Number 13, The Change. This is a Tobias book, which means it's going to be heartbreaking. This is a big one for Tobias, so listen up. There's a lot of stuff that goes on. While flying, Tobias happens to pass the same patch of land over and over again. No matter which direction he flies, he ends up over the same patch of land. So he decides to like kind of look at the land, and he finds 2 Hork-Bajor fleeing human controllers. So he and Rachel decide to go help them because the enemy of my enemy is my friend. So they find these Hork-Bajir and they're like, what's going on? And they are fleeing the controllers. They're like, we need to get to safety. So Rachel and Tobias help the Hork-Bajir to a safe place. Unfortunately, only one makes it and the other one is captured. And this guy's freaking out because he's like, that's my wife. I need to go find her. I need to protect her. And Tobias is like, okay, dude, let me just like talk with the other Animorphs first. The other Animorphs are kind of wary of this. They feel like this might be a trap, that the Hork-Bajir might be a Yeerk controller trying to deceive them. But Tobias knows, like in his bones, he knows that they are telling the truth. He knows that this Hork-Bajir is free and that they need to keep him free and that they need to help. He knows that some big change is going to happen. They take the Hork-Bajir to this valley that Tobias knows of, like he leads them there, but he's never seen this valley. He's never been there before, so he doesn't really know how he knows of this valley. And while he's talking to the Hork-Bajir tells him that right before he escaped, there was a mysterious voice in his head telling him to flee, telling him to run, and that there would be a guide there to bring him to safety. And we all sit and wonder, what could this be? What could be telling them these things? It's the Elemist. It's the Elemist. The Elemist is here. If you don't remember from my last video, the Elemist is this godlike being that is somehow playing with these guys. He's playing a part in this war. We haven't figured it out yet, but he can't intentionally interfere with them, but he can kind of whisper to them. He can kind of like push them in the right direction. He can give them a way to make a choice. And if they make the right choice, he can reward them, I guess. I don't really know. This seems a little bit more like intentional interfering. Like he's really got his fingers in these guys' pie. Because of Tobias's help with the Hork-Bajir, the Elemist agrees to grant Tobias his greatest wish. The next day, Tobias is in this like horrible accident. He's about to die, like a raccoon is about to eat him. And he screams out to the Elemist, please grant my wish. And the Elemist does. He gives Tobias the ability to morph again. But it doesn't turn him human. He's still a hawk. He's just able to morph. And Tobias is like, dude, I know my greatest desire is to be human again. Obviously. So why are you giving me the morphing ability but not making me human? Like, why would you do that? And the Elemist is like, I have limits. I can't do everything. But I did grant your wish. The Elemist sends Tobias kind of back in time to the night before everything happens, the night before he meets up with Jake and Marco and goes to the abandoned construction site. Tobias realizes that this is what he had thought was a dream. And the Elemist tells Tobias that he has the ability to change the timeline. Tobias can either tell his former past self to not go to the mall so that he avoids all of this. He'll never meet Elfangor. He'll never get the ability to morph. He'll never become a hawk. He'll never meet Rachel. And Tobias realizes that that's not what he wants. He doesn't want to be human without the ability to morph. Tobias realizes that he can never truly be human again. He's no longer human, and he's no longer a hawk. He is somehow a secret third thing. He's Tobias, and he's changed. So instead, Tobias just acquires his own DNA, his human DNA, and now has his human form as a morph. It's so cute because he surprises everybody by going to Rachel's school award ceremony. She was getting an award, and she goes in human morph and she sees him, and she's so happy that he's human again. And he's like, I'm not really human, but at least I'm human enough that I can hold you in my arms. He doesn't say that, but that's what my headcanon is. They're so cheesy, it's cute. Okay, number 14, The Unknown. I think realistically, this was the first book of the Animorphs I ever read. In 5th grade, I was, and still am, but at that point, I was a horse-obsessed child, and I was reading horse books. So I finally picked up this book that had a girl turning into a horse, And I was like, oh my God, it's a horse girl book. So I read it, and it was not a horse girl book. It was something about aliens. So I put it down, and I actually did not pick up Animorphs again until I was like 16, 17 years old. We are at Cassie's narration. Again, I don't hate Cassie. I think she has wonderful character arcs. I think she is an amazing character. It's just her books are honestly the most skippable. She has the like fun books, like they're fun side quests, stuff happens, but there's not a lot of lore drops. There's not a lot of things going on. So this has fun banter and some silly hijinks, but it does not have like a lot of canonical consequences. We find out that the controllers are really interested in this military site, and the kids sneak into this military site and find out what they are protecting. They are protecting what they think is their proof of alien life, and Axe laughs about it because he's like, that's an alien space toilet. That's all they have. They don't really have like a gun or like, I mean, I guess it's proof of alien life, but it's not like something important, something that super needs to be protected. That's all that really happens in this book. I guess it's supposed to be funny. I don't really find it super funny, but you know. Number 15, The Escape. Visser 1 is back on Earth. She is in charge of a new project that involves aquatic controllers. There's this aquatic psychic alien called the Lyran, and they are becoming controllers, and there's some sort of project involving sharks that are happening with the Lyran, and Visser 1 is in charge of that. They have to help Tobias morph things because he's not really used to it. It's okay. I still love you. But there's a funny scene where he gets stuck on a dolphin. This is a Marco book, so Marco is really digging deep into his psyche and explaining, oh my God, is that car just gonna keep going? Okay. Developing his story of grief, but then also like his personality, because Marco is the funny one. Marco is the sarcastic one. He's the one that's always there with the funny joke. He brings the humor. He teases Rachel. At one point, he's talking about the horrible feelings and thoughts he has about his mother literally being the leader of the Yeerks, and saying that he wished he could talk to Jake about this. Jake has been his best friend since childhood, but that's just not their friendship. Marco is Marco. Marco doesn't bring up terrifying thoughts of loss and grief and not having a place in this world, knowing that his mother is his enemy. Marco is the comedian. Marco is not allowed to have these feelings. He has to be the happy one. And that's so sad to think about, that he can't even tell his best friend about his thoughts and feelings because he feels that's not his place. Anyway, they have to morph sharks to get down to this aquatic project place, and they find out that the Yeerks are putting these mind control devices into the sharks, and they end up getting these mind control devices inserted into their shark brains, which also becomes their real brains when they unmorph. This means that they have to infiltrate the Yeerk ship, bringing bringing Marco face to face with his mother, Eva. I don't know if I ever said her name before. Her name is Eva. They rarely say her name. Marco just calls her mom or mother. Her name is Eva, so I'll address her as Eva. It's revealed that Eva is not a voluntary controller. At one point, he's literally like face to face with his mom. He is out of animal morph. He is Marco in front of his mom, and he's pretending to be a controller. And the Visser 1 says, did you know your host is my host's biological son? And I can tell that your host is acting up, and that's why you can't respond correctly to me, but you need to control your host better. My host is kicking and screaming and making quite a ruckus in my brain because she's seeing her son for the first time in years. I'm gonna cry thinking about this. I also forgot to mention that only Marco and Jake know who this is. The other Animorphs, I guess, never met Marco's mom, so they don't know that she is his mom. So Rachel is going full murder mode. She's like, we need to kill Visser 1. She's our enemy. If we can kill her, she will go down. And they realize that they aren't able to destroy the devices in their brains without destroying the facility. So Marco makes the hard decision to destroy the facility with his mom inside. He keeps Rachel from killing her, directly killing her, so he reveals who she is. but he's like still willing to sacrifice her to the explosion that's going to happen. Rachel at the very end is like, guys, do you hear that? And Marco's like, no, what are you talking about? She's like, I hear a sub. And he's like, I don't hear anything. They're in like a dolphin or shark morph, so they can hear like echolocation. And Rachel's like, no, I hear a sub. Does that mean that maybe there were some survivors? And Marco is like, no. He thinks Rachel is lying. He thinks Rachel is trying to make him feel better. But Eva's fate is never revealed. Number 16, the warning. Jake finally decides to Google Yeerks. This is the 90s, so Googling wasn't really a thing back then. But he finds a chat room that is full of Yeerk discussions. It's people who say, I'm a Yeerk. Here's what's happening with the Yeerks. I think my parents are Yeerks. What do I do? Like, it's a full-on support group for Yeerks. And so they hack the chat room, and there's hijinks that happen. And they find out that it's all traced back to Joe Bob Fenestry. Joe Bob Fenestry. I'm dating an Earl Bob, so can I really judge? Anyway, Joe Bob is like the Bill Gates of this world. They crash his multi-million-dollar home, and they find out that Joe Bob, obviously, who would have guessed it, is a controller. Not only that, Joe Bob is Visser 3's twin brother, who has been exiled, and Visser 3 has been trying to kill him. There's some hijinks that are going on. The kids are in like life-threatening situations, but they have some time to talk to him, and they go, hey, there's not a Kandrona ray anywhere near here. How are you surviving? How are you not going through the fugue state and dying a horrible death of starvation? This Yeerk reveals that he is a cannibalistic serial killer. He lures controllers to his multi-million-dollar home, rips open their heads, and eats the Yeerk inside of them. Cassie is obviously like, that's immoral and disgusting, and I think you need to be destroyed. And Jake is like, actually, Cassie, let's not go that far. He's destroying Yeerks. Who cares if some hosts are dying along with him? And Cassie is obviously enraged by that. Oh my God, Jake, how can you say that? You're supposed to be the good guy. Isn't that also what the Andalites preached? That the death of a few hosts don't matter if it means that more Yeerks will die? Jake and Cassie have this huge fight. Remember that they're supposed to be in love with each other, but they also opposite sides of the moral compass. The next day, Jake is like looking for Cassie, and he finds her. She's like in wolf morph and talking to this little boy, and it turns out that was one of the little boys in the chat room that was asking about his parents maybe being a Yeerk. And Cassie was warning him not to ever go into that chat room again. Don't talk to your parents about Yeerks. She was pretending to be like a magic dog so that the little boy would understand and like believe her. It was weird. Jake and her have a conversation, and Jake basically ends up saying it's hard to fight evil without doing some evil, which is basically his character thesis for the rest of the series. What is too far? How much evil is acceptable when you are fighting evil? This is a kid's book, guys. Joe Bob ends up dying in a fire, and it's very much implied that one or more of the Animorphs committed some arson against this cannibalistic serial killer. Anyway, where were we? I had to stop because my battery ran out and I don't remember where I am. Number 17, the underground. The kids are flying around in their bird morphs, and they fly past the window of a skyscraper and they see a man. They just have this feeling that this man is going to jump. And he does jump. He is trying to commit suicide. And Rachel and Cassie and I think Tobias all fly together to grab this man in their bird morphs to keep him from hitting the ground. They save this man from his attempted suicide. This is the second attempted suicide within the series. Don't worry, there will be more later. Rachel finds out a bit later that her mom, who is a lawyer, is representing the man in this trial because his family wants to institutionalize him. The reason they want to put him in a mental hospital is because he's raving about these aliens and a Yeerk in his brain. And so Rachel obviously is like, "Oh, Mom, that's a toughie. This guy's gonna be a handful. The kids want to talk to the guy, so they just go through a lot of hijinks of morphing into various insects and bats and other animals to try to get into the hospital to talk to this guy. Basically, the guy says that the Kandrona Ray Yeerk pool that they destroyed like 10 books ago, remember that one when Rachel turns into a bear for the first time? When Yeerks couldn't have access to Kandrona Rays, they found a replacement. They found that maple ginger flavored oatmeal is sustainable, like it sustains them the way Kandrona Rays do, but it is highly addictive. Basically, it replaces a part of the brain in the Yeerk and drives them insane, and they are addicted to this oatmeal. So the Animorphs are like, oh my god, we have this super weapon against the Yeerks. They have this horrible, addicting substance that we can use to control them, make them go insane, handicap them basically, so that we can have an easier time defeating them. Now, Cassie and Tobias are like, something about exploiting that weakness feels a bit wrong. Rachel talks to Cassie and is like, yeah, well, the one guy that was a serial killer that was destroying Yeerks, you said he needed to be destroyed. So how is this any different, us destroying Yeerks in a more humane way than what he was doing? And Cassie is like, yeah, well, there's this give and some take, because like he was killing people mercilessly and he was different, but then these people, we would be harming innocent people and innocent Yeerks. And then they're like, are Yeerks innocent at all? Because they are parasites. And like, it's this whole moral discussion that we've always been having about, are their actions in this war justifiable because of the greater good in saving humanity, or are those actions just as bad as what the Yeerks are doing? Because they end up killing Taxxons and Hork-Bajor and Yeerks. They're morphing into things to try and get to the Yeerk pool because they decide that they will make the entire Yeerk pool into oatmeal. So they buy out the entire stock of maple ginger flavored oatmeal, and they are going to make the Yeerk pool into one big bowl of oatmeal and hopefully destroy everyone. And Rachel ends up throwing Visser 3 in his Andalite morph into the Yeerk pool. Now Rachel knows that Andalites eat by absorbing food from their hooves. So if his hooves touch this oatmeal, he's going to be addicted to this oatmeal. It doesn't really work out that way. I don't really remember exactly how Visser 3 escapes. It ends with more of an ambiguous ending, and Rachel's mother is like, hey, my client is gone. He escaped the mental hospital, and they're saying that a bear freed him. I don't know what's going on with that. But Rachel tells us that she went into the hospital to free this guy, because even if he has a Yeerk in his head, even if he is horribly insane because of some silly oatmeal, he at least should be free. Number 18, The Decision. This is another Axe narrated book. As we previously established, when Axe is in human morph, he goes a little bit crazy over food because he's never had taste buds before, and we enter into some Cinnabon shenanigans. Now, if you're in the Animorphs fandom, you might see some jokes around cinnamon buns or Cinnabon in general, and that is because Axe loves cinnamon rolls. He loves them. They're his favorite. We find out that the second in command of the U.S. Secret Service is in a coma at their local hospital, and we know that this is a hospital that has controllers on its staff. So the kids are like, oh my god, we cannot let one of the highest military commanders become a controller. They try and sneak into the hospital. They have to morph into sneaking into the hospital, and they all decide that A, they should save him from being a controller, but also they should try and morph him because he's in a coma right now, so he can't really do anything. Use him or his morph to inform the U.S. military and the government about the Yeerks, and they'll most likely believe the second in command of the Secret Service and less likely to believe a bunch of kids, which they are. The plan doesn't really work because they morph into these tiny, tiny little mosquitoes, and they fly into the room and they're on him, and then boom! Something happens and they end up on a spaceship, and they're like, what's going on? How did that happen? Why are we here? What? So Axe finally explains some of the logic behind morphing. Basically, when you morph into something really small, the rest of your mass ends up in something called Z space. Because they morphed to something so tiny, like a mosquito, most of their mass was in Z space, and there were 6 of them all together, and they just happened to be in the same spot that a spaceship is going through. And so basically what happened is the ship hit them in Z space, and so it pulled them into the ship. Does it make sense? Not really. That's sci-fi logic for you. They end up on an Andalite ship, which is great because Axe has not been in contact with the Andalites since his last narrated book, where he basically told them to fuck off and that he would be working with the Animorphs because the Andalites didn't want to come rescue Earth anymore. He kind of starts acting like a jerk because he immediately defers to the Andalites instead of Prince Jake. And the Andalites don't really like the humans. The Andalites find them inferior and basically tell them to go sit in a room and be quiet while the real heroes work. Turns out that the Captain Andalite was a traitor, and he ties up Axe, but don't worry, the humans are coming to the rescue because humans are amazing. They're on their way to Lyra. Remember those psychic aquatic aliens, the Lyrans? This is their home world. So they're on their way to there. While they're on this mission, the Animorphs keep mysteriously disappearing. It turns out that they're snapping back to Earth. They're safe, but they keep disappearing. They disappear enough that Axe is the last one left. And basically the mission, the reason why the Andalites were going to Lyra in the first place is because Lyra is a lost cause. They are all controllers. All of the Lyran are controllers, or enough of them are that the Andalites feel the only way to get a leg up in the war is to demolish Lyra. They ask the Animorphs to help them detonate a bomb that has been planted on the biggest landmass of Lyra. Andalites are no better than Yeerks. They are also genocidal monsters. But I guess, I don't know, because like Axe does it, he detonates the bomb, and they kind of see it as a good thing, like a win, but it's not really a win because this is war, and you don't really win wars. You just defeat an enemy. So anyway, all of the Animorphs are back in the hospital right where they were before as mosquitoes, and they decide that this is a lost cause. They're gonna let the general or commander, whoever he was, just become a controller because they are too tired. And also, like I said, you can't win every battle. Axe's books really are bummer endings. Megamorphs 2, In the Time of the Dinosaurs. This is more Sario rips. This also is another Megamorphs that doesn't really, it's not really canonical. I mean, it is canon, like the things that happen and the things they talk about come up in later books, so it did happen, but it's like in the timeline, in the things that are going, this is just another shenanigans book. There's just fun things happening. Like, yes, the banter is fun. Yes, I recommend you read it, but does it really matter? No. Basically, Sario Rip happens. I don't even remember how, but they end up 65 million years in the past, in the time of the dinosaurs. I feel like this was just because in the 90s there was always a kids meet the dinosaurs trend. There was always an episode about dinosaurs, about going back in time and seeing the dinosaurs. Any kind of fantasy or sci-fi series, especially books, they always had like a dinosaur. Some things we find out is Tobias, very much a dino kid. He says that when his uncle did not want him to make noise, when his uncle was too tired of him, he would go sit up in his room and just read dinosaur books, because Tobias has a very sad life. We also learn that Tobias does not have the same regenerative abilities that the other Animorphs do. Basically, because this is all DNA-based powers, when they morph, if they're injured in their morph, if they demorph, they just revert back to the original DNA. And because injuries are not DNA related, their regular like when they morph, their injuries go away. It's the same forwards and backwards. So basically, if I think at one point Rachel breaks her leg in human morph, she just morphs another animal and comes back and she's fine. And it's the reason why they can be ripped apart as animals and then come back completely fine. It's just, we got to make this PG, right? The kid's got to stay alive. But Tobias does not have that. Apparently the LMS fucked it up when he was given his morphing abilities back, because he breaks his wing and Rachel's like, well, just morph human and morph back, and you won't have a broken arm anymore, broken wing anymore. So he does that, and it just makes it worse. Poor little Tobias does not have the same abilities that everyone does. He also has a harder time morphing. He's such a loser. I love him. There's a lot of dino hijinks. They get separated, they reunite, they use a lot of dinosaur facts. It's really cool. And then they watch the dinosaurs be killed by a meteor. It's really not that important. Number 19, the departure. This is the last one we'll go over. I was going to end on the David arc, but I got really tired of writing notes down, so we're not going to end on the David arc. This is a Cassie book, and this is a Cassie book that does not suck. This is a non-skippable Cassie book, okay? I promise you. Cassie and the rest of the gang are on a mission, and Cassie ends up killing a Hork-Bajor while she's in wolf morph. Later that night, she's in human morph, and she finds something stuck in her teeth, and it's Hork-Bajor skin, and she's entirely grossed out by that. So she decides that she is quitting the Animorphs. So she tells them, I'm quitting the Animorphs. And all of them are really upset at her. They're like, how dare you? Don't you think that we all kind of hate being Animorphs? Like, don't you think we all are afraid and terrified and sad about this? But Jake, being the leader that he is like, anyone is welcome to leave the Animorphs if they so choose. I'm not going to force you to stay. He did that thing with Marco too. So he's like, Cassie, if you want to leave, you can leave. The only thing is you cannot morph. If you're not going to be on these missions with us, you cannot morph. You can never morph again. And Cassie's like, okay, I guess so, if that's your one caveat. Like I said, Jake is very paranoid of somebody catching them morphing if they're not like on their missions. And he is also kind of worried for Cassie's safety. Like, if she is caught by a controller and they're not there to help her and they don't know that she's been caught, like, she's in trouble, the rest of them are in trouble. Okay, it's a whole thing. Anyway, Cassie is living her life not being an Animorph, getting to ride her horse, because remember, Cassie's a horse girl, we love her. This is also a morality book, so we're going to get into a lot of philosophical and moral discussions. Basically, Cassie finds a little girl who happens to be a controller. Cassie points out that the Yeerks are enslaving people and other sentient beings, and that is bad. That is beyond bad. And the Yeerk counters back like, I have a right to experience life the same way that you guys do. How would you feel if you were stuck in the body of a worm, not able to see, hear, taste, experience sunlight, smell flowers? How would that life look to you? And Cassie's like, okay, but you are a parasite. And the Yeerk is like, but aren't parasites also living beings? And also, I feel like I'm a bit more than a parasite because I have a brain. Once I have the ability to move and taste and experience life, like, I am a sentient creature. Like, yes, I'm using another person. Like, what about this little girl? Like, does she care to be a controller? Like, does it matter? Like, what about all the people who are voluntary hosts? The people who want to be hosts to an alien that can control their life and take those hard living decisions out of their hands? There are goods to Yeerks. That's all this little Yeerk is saying. And Cassie's like, I see what you mean, but also, like, Yeerk bad still, but also you do have a point, just maybe don't capture and enslave sentient beings, and then maybe you wouldn't be so bad. Like, I see what you mean. That's their back and forth. They go back and forth on this all the time. The Yeerk points out that if she were to let her host go, if she were to give her freedom, she would be sacrificing her own freedom. So she tries to make a deal with Cassie, and she says, I will let this host go, but that means I have to live in your brain. You can be a voluntary controller. Cassie's like, actually, no, because I have really, really sensitive information in my brain about the identity of those Andalite bandits. She doesn't say this, but this is why she refuses. She's like, I cannot make that deal with you. because it would sacrifice the safety of my loved ones. And so they make a different deal. They say, I will let this person go if you morph into, oh my God.
Potatoes are soft.
You can turn it off.
Okay.
Cassie agrees to a different deal. Basically, she will morph into a caterpillar and live her life helpless, sightless, smellless, unable to walk very far, not able to do anything, and become a chrysalis, basically. If the Yeerk will let Karen, is the young controller's name, if the Yeerk will let Karen go. And Cassie does, because Cassie is a selfless person, and she will definitely sacrifice herself if it means freedom for even one person. While Cassie is staying in this morph, she becomes a Nothlit, the Yeerk is begging her not to go through with it, saying, no, I take it back. I'll let her go. You don't have to do this, because she sees that a person is willing to sacrifice her freedom for another person. She basically feels empathy for the first time. And so she's begging Cassie not to go through with it. But Cassie never goes back on a deal. Not true. But anyway, when the Animorphs find her, it's too late. She's become a Nothlit, and she lives her days as a caterpillar. She becomes a chrysalis. Unable to move, unable to see. But you know what happens with caterpillars and chrysalis is they actually go through something called metamorphosis. And Cassie emerges as this beautiful butterfly. The Animorphs are all there to see her emerge as this beautiful butterfly. And Act mentions that if she's, a new creature with new DNA, the time frame resets. And so she's able to morph back human. A few days later, she meets up with Karen, the girl who was the controller, and she's free. She's able to be herself again. The Yeerk is living forever in her days in the Yeerk pool without ever having a host again. And Karen lets Cassie know that the Yeerk wanted her to be free. The Yeerk wanted her to break the deal, and she would be happy to know that Cassie is herself again. Cassie ends the book with this new understanding of Yeerks and this new empathy for them. And also, she understands that Yeerks can be changed if you just talk to them. They're not one big mass of evil. They can be changed for the better. Let's hope that goes somewhere. That's where I'm gonna stop. I'm sweaty, the light's going down. And also, I was going to end on the David arc, but I got really tired of writing my notes, and I think the David arc just needs to be kind of at the forefront of a video, so the next video will start with that. I'll see you in the next one. If you like this video, give it a like and subscribe. If you want to see me go through the rest of the Animorphs series, I will post more of these videos, even if you don't like it, even if nobody watches these. I really just like yapping about Animorphs, and hopefully I will have more creative juices flowing, and I'll be able to make more videos for you guys to enjoy. Okay, thank you. Bye-bye. Fine. It's cool. You can say you are the fool with my arms out like an angel through the stars.